Hello, Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Good for Us. And today we're going to talk about all things Sri Lanka versus Australia, the Australian tour of Sri Lanka, however we want to word it. And thankfully, I've got an absolute connoisseur of cricket to talk about this brilliant series. If you span the entire all three formats, it was a draw. It was 5-5 to both teams, something that I was genuinely surprised by. Aaron, were you surprised by this?
Well, first and foremost, Ajad, thank you very much for having me back on the channel. Always a pleasure to be on cricket for us. But in terms of the whole 5-5 thing, a little bit surprised, yes, in particular in the Test series. And we'll
Yeah.
get onto that in due course with regards to how Sri Lanka pulled that off in the second Test match. A great victory for the Lions in incredibly testing circumstances, given everything that is going on in Sri Lanka at the moment. But a fantastic tour, really good tour, great ODI series, an exciting T20 series. And what a way to bring down the curtain on this tour and with a 1-1 in the Test series. Great cricket, fantastic entertainment. I think 5-5 is fair across all three formats.
Yeah, and who would have thunk it prior to the series that it was going to be 5-5? No one predicted Sri Lanka winning the ODIs. Nobody predicted Sri Lanka winning the last test match, especially considering what happened in the last test match. So let's focus onto the test series then. Second test match. Sri Lanka, well, they win the toss. They let Australia bat first, and Australia gets two of their best batsmen to score hundreds, and one of them a slightly bigger hundred. Stephen Smith finally 28 Test centuries, gets 145, 146 not out. Marnus Labuschagne at the other end gets another 100, but then there is a mini collapse of sorts. You could call it that from Australia, so they don't get a 400 plus total, especially in the conditions they were playing at. And then Sri Lanka just channeled their inner Sri Lankanness, right? The corner tigers. I know that's a Pakistan term, but they could use it too. They could use the lions for the sake of argument. It was just outstanding the way Sri Lanka. What was it? All five of their top five of their batsmen, all of them scored 50 plus runs, and one of them scored 200 and freaking six. His highest score in Test cricket is from Dinesh Chandimal. I know I'm just doing a long uh, uh, preview into what you're going to talk about. But dude, this was just amazing. Like I was blown out of my mind because I did not see this. End of day four, I thought, yeah, it's going to be a draw. It's going to be a draw. Did not predict what happened next. What are your thoughts considering this second test match started with such a brilliant performance from two of Australia's greats?
Well, that was just it, Asjad. It was unexpected. And that is why we love Test cricket so much. You know, you can't lose a test and can't win a test on the first day. It really does have to span over the entirety of the game, I suppose. And for Sri Lanka, they definitely were on the back foot as a result of those two turning up. And they were two excellent tons as well. Might I just add, I think Sri Lanka actually bowled pretty well in that first innings. Yes, at times the radar did go astray, but I think for the most part they kept it quite disciplined. But Labuschagne and Smith, again, those two, they really are different gravy, aren't they? I know that Smith in particular has been struggling with that conversion rate in Test cricket of recent times, but he looked in fantastic form, as did Marnus at the other end. And then Dinesh Chandimal for Sri Lanka, I was delighted for him because there has been a lot of questions when it comes to his place in that Sri Lankan team. I mean, there are players who are coming up now, the likes of, you've got Patum Nisanka, for example, to name one. You've got Charith Asalanka, he's another one. Obviously, people might want to see Dick Weller go up the order as well for a little
Yep.
bit of spice, a little bit of dynamism, I suppose, in that middle order. His place has been under scrutiny at times, in particular because of the ways in which he's been getting out. You know, he gets in, he gets to a solid 30, and then he throws away his wicket. This time around, this was like prime Dinesh Chandimal. Patience, class, fortitude, mental grit and stamina, all in abundance. It was a sensational knock from the experienced Sri Lankan batsman, and he deserved that double ton. And what a knock it was. And when you look at the wider scenario, the wider picture of this game, it was pivotal. It was the turning point. And talking of turning, what a beautiful transition that is to talk about a left arm off spinner. Any excuse to talk about Prabhath Jayasuriya, a man who wasn't even meant to play in this test. Unfortunately, Praveen Jayawit-Rama tested positive for COVID, so Prabhath came in his place. And boy, oh boy, did he not play quite spectacularly for the Sri Lankans this week. 12 for on Test debut, the best ever by Sri Lankan Test debutant funnily enough, surpassing the 11 for 178, which was produced by Praveen Jaitweerama against Bangladesh in Palakela in 2021. And another great stat, I love my stats, Asjad, the fourth best ever figures by a Test debutant. Do you know the best ever figures, out of interest? In
I know
terms of
it's
wickets
six.
taken, 16,
Oh,
yep.
16. Yeah, but I don't know who it is though.
Narendra Hawani, Indian leg spinner, I should say. He had a very interesting career again, 16 wickets on debut, and then a certain Anil Kumble came in
Uh,
and, yeah.
Stole the show.
Yeah, unfortunately for Narendra, but a great piece of trivia. And for Prabhath, a guy who before this test match, yes, he was working hard, he was in and around the squad. He would never have thought for a million years he was going to be playing against Australia. To then take 12 for, and the way in which he bowled as well. You know me, I'm a spin bowler myself. I love seeing spinners excel in this game. But the flights, the drift, the guile, he's also got quite a potent arm ball at his disposal, which he was just banging into the pads. Great entertainment, great display of spin bowling, and yeah, a debut to remember for Prabhath Jayasuriya.
100%. And you had a really good segue there, which is hilarious because I was going to ask you about Prabhat Jayasuriya next. So you've talked about him. The thing is, I had no idea this could happen because, and I'll explain why. People might say, "Oh, it's Sri Lanka. It's always dust bowls. It's always spin. It's that." After the performance they had in the first test, it looked like Sri Lanka losing a few players due to COVID. Three debutants in this test match as well. Everyone stepped up. Considering the circumstances in which they're living in, it's a perfect metaphor for how they fight back,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the way they stood up against a very, very potent Australian team, who I might add hasn't lost in a while, okay? Hasn't lost a test match in a while. And I was genuinely very, very impressed with the Sri Lankan performance. Also, their captain, the guy, the most consistent opener over the past 5 years. I don't care about Dean Elgar anymore. I don't care about Craig Brathwaite. It is Dimut Karunaratne. He's been consistent. He's been performing. He's made good decisions as captain. I think he needs a medal of honor of some sort from the Sri Lankan government or something. No puns intended. Because what he's been doing is sensational, considering the peaks and troughs Sri Lanka's gone through over the past 4 or 5 years. In terms of Test cricket specifically, it's just outstanding. And I think even here he scored 80 odd and a very good partnership with Mendes at the top of the order. Is that right? I think yeah. One wicket fell and then both of them batted really well. So any words on the captain of this brilliant Sri Lankan team?
Well, again, Ashjad, have we got any more superlatives to describe Dimuth Karunaratne? He's just a legend, isn't he?
Yeah,
Let's be completely honest. You mentioned Mr. Reliable, Mr. Cool Heads, Mr. Ice in the Veins, whatever you want to call him. He's just outstanding. And again, if he did play for a side like Australia or England or India, you'd be discussing him as one of the best openers on the planet without a shadow of a doubt. In my opinion, he is just class personified. And something which I love about Dimuth Karunaratne as well, he backs his spinners. He
yes,
always backs his spin bowlers, whether that's Ramesh Mendis, whether that's Embal Denia, Jaiwit Jai Saraya. He just loves to back his spinners. He sets them attacking fields. He has conversations with them to see where their head's at and what tactics they want to employ. He is a model captain, but not only that, he's a model cricketer, isn't he? In terms of just the coolness, the calmness. When Dimuth Karunaratne is at the crease, as a fan of Sri Lankan cricket, you feel safe, you feel
yeah,
comfortable, you feel as though he's going to go in there, dig in, wear away the opposition and score at least 50, if not 100. So there aren't many more things that I can add, to be honest, about Dimuth. It's been an absolute pleasure of mine to watch him over the years. You
yeah.
mentioned the reliability, the consistency. In my view, it is between him and Dean Elgar, maybe David Warner, also up there as well alongside Craig Brathwaite. But Dimuth Karunaratne is just different gravy. And I tell you
Yeah.
what, for an opening batsman, opening the batting is a completely different beast. It's so difficult. Even as a top tier elite opener, you're going to succeed very, very rarely. You're going to fail a lot more times than you put on these big scores. And yet he just keeps coming back and back and back, unfazed, completely unbothered. He's a great, great ambassador for Sri Lankan cricket. And to be honest, I'm delighted for him. And of course, the Sri Lankan country at the moment during these tough times.
Yeah, 100%. I just thought of something that I think I heard it in another video, which where they talked about how this test match had one of the best pitches considering Asian conditions. You had runs on the first day, you had reverse swing, you had spin playing a part, you had people scoring big runs, but also bowlers getting purchase of some sort. Mitchell Stark picked up 4 wickets, bowled brilliantly, considering the amount of overs he bowled, the pace he bowled at, getting the ball to reverse. He was very, very potent from an Australian perspective. But then you look at the class difference, and I know Nathan Lyon has over 400 test wickets, but he bowled 64 overs and went
Mm.
for 180, 190 runs. He picked up a few wickets, no doubt, but the difference between the way the Sri Lankan spinners were bowling and the Australian spinners were bowling, it seemed like night and day. It could also be the fact that the Sri Lankan batsmen just played spin much better than the Australian batsmen did. And that's something we can relate to the first test where the Sri Lankan batsman couldn't play Travis Head, right? Where he took 4 wickets in 2.5 overs, right? They couldn't play Swepson or Nathan Lyon on day three of the first test. So what are your thoughts about this pitch potentially being the best type of Asian pitch? Also, just a caveat there: do you think this is the best way to beat Australia in Asian conditions?
Oh, that's an interesting second question. I'll start with the whole debate about the spin and the pitch itself, though. It was a good pitch. And again, it was a great test match. And obviously, if you're a Sri Lankan fan, you're going to be a lot happier than an Australian fan at this moment in time. First ever innings victory for Sri Lanka over the Aussies, might I just add, in
Hmm.
Test cricket, which is not bad for a nation which has only been a part of the ICC as a full member since 1982.
Yeah,
So again, just sums up the courage and the fighting spirit of Sri Lanka as a test nation, but I definitely think they became a lot more confident. When it came to playing line in particular, I always mention this, don't I, Asjad? And I think you know exactly what's going to come out my mouth. Move your feet
yeah,
against spin bowling. And that's exactly what they did. They closed down the angle, they met the pitch of the ball, they started rotating the strike a lot better. They weren't just going to the sweep shot, which is something that Chris Silverwood mentioned before the series. It was just very impressive. Very, very impressive. And Chandimal again was fantastic at just farming the strike against the likes of Swepson and Nathan Lyon. So I think the pitch was very good. In terms of that other question, that is the $1 million question. Is this how you beat Australia in Asian conditions? I suppose yes. By bowling well and playing well against spin. Sounds easy, doesn't it, to be honest? It really does. But this Sri Lankan side, they did something similar against New Zealand in 2019, beat a very strong New Zealand side. Might I just add, with the likes of Kane Williamson and Taylor and Latham and Watling in there. So I do think this is the way for Sri Lanka to go forward. The only thing that I would say with Sri Lanka at times, and yes, in this test match it did pay off,
hmm
they can go a little bit gung ho, and it
yeah,
has backfired in the past. I'm talking about batting here,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And in particular, Neeraj Dickwella is a fantastic example of this. That's just something they need to be a little bit concerned about. But in terms of that almost big risk, potentially big reward, I think that is the way to close the caliber gap between a side like Sri Lanka and Australia in high conditions.
That makes logical sense, and I think what they did here, everything just fired for Sri Lanka. Everything worked into a plan, and that's why, like you said, first time beating Australia by an innings. After the defeat they had in the previous match, it was just night and day. I used this analogy before. I'm going to use it again. J- Uh, Sri Lanka learned from their mistakes, and they used their feet against the spinners. Travis Head did not. Maybe it's just slightly different pitch, obviously, but Travis Head looked like he shouldn't be bowling. Right? He genuinely considering why did they not go with a Glenn Maxwell approach potentially? And there's a lot of conversation around that.
There
What are
is,
your
yep.
thoughts about, Maxwell potentially having being used? Did they make a mistake by not using someone of the quality, not just with the bat, but also someone who can give you a genuine second spinner option? Well, third spinner option in a way.
It's an interesting one, and hindsight's a fantastic thing, isn't it? I
Yeah.
think they would have gone with Maxwell if Travis Head didn't take those 4 wickets in the
Yeah.
first test. I think
Mhm.
that's exactly what happened because there is a lot of talk at the moment in terms of Maxwell's return to the test side, and there is an argument for it. But I'm going to be honest, I think Travis Head has done a very good job, had an excellent Ashes as well, might I
Mhm.
just add. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you can't really drop him just because Glenn Maxwell might bat better and might give you a better spin option. I don't think that's logistically feasible, to be honest. But in terms of that second test, I personally would have gone with Maxwell. Travis Head is a decent spin bowler, right? But he's a part timer. And
Yeah.
even part timers do have their day. Look at Joe
Mar-
Root in Port
Marcus
Elizabeth.
North. Marcus North. He got six for against Pakistan. So. Everyone has that happen to them. So I do understand. I do agree with you. Sorry to interrupt that, by the way.
Oh no, it's a perfectly valid point, Asjad. We're just making the same point.
All right, that's great. All right. Speaking of making the same point, we got to ask, right? I'm not going to ask you batsman of the series. I'm not going to ask you bowler of the series because considering the circumstances,
I
it's going
think
to
we
go
know who
to
it's going to be.
yeah. But this is a toughie. You have to go pick one Kamalka moment of the series, and you've got a couple of options, but you have to pick one, Aaron. Which one is it going to be?
This is a really tough one. This is a really tough one. I must say, I can't remember exactly who it was, but one of the most mind blowing and baffling decisions I've ever seen was it Swepson and that
Oh,
review. Do you know what
oh,
I'm talking about?
yeah,
It's for those who don't know what we're talking about here, please just go onto like Channel 9 or 7 or whatever it is in Australia or Fox Cricket. Just look at the highlights and just look at the review. it was hilarious. He middled it. And,
yeah,
and they thought it had gone LBW, and then that was the end of their reviews. They had no more
yeah,
reviews left in the second test. So that would be my Kamalka moment because that
yeah,
isn't really incredible and amazing, but that'd be my most baffling and mind-boggling one without a shadow of a doubt. In terms of Kamalka moment, I'd say Dinesh Chandimal bringing up his double century. You know, he's worked so hard for that. There's been a lot of talk about his place, his immediate future in that Sri Lankan side. I'd go with Dinesh Chandimal's double century. Absolutely. And boy, did he deserve it as well.
100%. He's showed his class. I remember when it was around 2010, 2011, there was talks about the next three big Asian batsmen. It was Umar Akmal, Virat Kohli, and Dinesh Chandimal. And he still has it in him, Dinesh Chandimal, but it just comes and goes. That's the unfortunate truth. But absolute class player. And just want to mention my Kamalka moment was yes, the Chandimal and the Jayasuriya performances. I think Chandimal was should have been given out on 30. I think that for me was the moment potentially. But what are your thoughts on that moment, Aaron?
No comment.
Love it. Absolutely love it. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Aaron, for your time. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Do check out the Cricket Connoisseur on every single platform in the entire universe, online, offline. He'll be at Warwickshire games, right? He'll be
Yeah.
at random games in
Yeah.
the UK. You'll see him. You'll spot him. Just give him a tap and say, "Hey, what's up?" Because really nice guy. Thank you so much, Aaron. And yeah, everyone. Until next time, take care.